Friends and colleagues, welcome to our side event, Sharing Good Practices Addressing HFC Bank, a need to accelerate HFC emissions reduction. I am Makoto Kato, General Manager of the Overseas Environmental Cooperation Center, Japan. I am pleased to serve as the moderator today. Today's virtual meeting is organized as an official side event of the 43rd session of the Open-Ended Working Group of the Montreal Protocol on Substances that Deplete the Ozone Layer, jointly by the Ministry of the Environment Japan, MOEJ, and the Climate and Clean Air Coalition, CCAC. To kick off our side event, I would like to invite Mr. Nathan Borgford-Panel of the CCAC Secretariat to deliver his opening remarks. Nathan, over to you.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Wonderful. Okay. Well, I'm very excited to be here today. Thank you. On behalf of the Climate and Clean Air Coalition and the Ministry of Environment of Japan, I am very happy to welcome all of the participants and attendees to our side event. You know, when I was working on my opening, I was reflecting on the fact that in this last month, my hometown of Seattle and the Pacific Northwest region of the United States and British Columbia and Canada have experienced scorching heat at levels that were never considered even in the most world-ending scenarios developed by the IPCC. I live in Switzerland and had friends calling me fairly regularly to see if they should check on my parents to make sure that they were okay during those extreme weather events. Fortunately, they were. They had snuck off quietly to Montana, where temperatures were a little bit lower. There are also initial reports that more than 1 billion shellfish, like mussels and oysters, boiled alive in their shells during these heat waves. The social, environmental, and human damages of this one extreme weather event alone, and I should say it's not over yet, it's still ongoing, but the damage is astronomical. And unfortunately, this is a story that is becoming more and more regular and frequent all over the world. It's not an abnormal story. It's not one that I ever thought I would tell for Seattle, though. One of the immediate consequences of an event like this, particularly in Seattle, is an increasing call for access to air conditioning, which has significant implications not only for ongoing emissions of F-gas refrigerants, but also eventually and inevitably what happens to that equipment at its end of life and throughout its life. Now, according to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, to put the world on a path consistent with 1.5 degrees and hopefully stave off some of the worst consequences of global warming, not prevent them, as I've indicated, we're already experiencing it in real time, but to stave off some of the worst consequences. Global HFC emissions would have to be reduced by about 80% by 2050 or more. The challenge ahead of us is great, but this is why I'm actually so happy to be here today with all of you, supporting this, the most effective multilateral environmental agreement in human history. This treaty has already done so much to protect the ozone layer and to avoid catastrophic global warming. The Kigali Agreement alone is expected to avoid 0.5 degrees Celsius of warming by the end of this century. But there's more that this treaty can do. This treaty has always done more, and I have great hopes for it going forward. There's so much more that we can do together with this treaty. This is why the CCAC actually joined with Japan in 2019 to help form the initiative on fluorocarbon life cycle management to address an important gap in end-of-life disposal of F-gases. This is why life cycle management is a core part of our fast action mitigation strategy for this decade and a core part of what we expect to be our new hub addressing all aspects of cooling over this decade. Together, I am confident that we can meet and even surpass the goals that we have committed to in the Paris Agreement. And I am very much looking forward to the presentations today to learn more about what's already happening on the ground, the exciting projects and good practice that's already out there to help us make this dream a reality. So again, thank you very much. I'm looking forward to this event. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nathan. Today, we're focusing on the issue of HFC banks. We're going to have presentation from excellent speakers from across the world. And then they are going to share good practices to address fluorocarbons HFC banks issue. As the first presenter, I would like to invite Dr. Sueli Machado Carvalho from Instituto Clima e Sociedade Brazil to deliver her presentation. Sueli, over to you.
And good morning, good afternoon, and evening to all. I'm Sueli Carvalho. I'm Senior Advisor for the Kigali project at Instituto Clima e Sociedade. On behalf of my colleagues, Dr. Camila Borges, Project Coordinator at ICS, Mr. Vital Ribeiro from Project Healthy Hospitals, PHS, and Dr. Steve Anderson from IGST, I would like to thank the Government of Japan and CCAC for this kind invitation. For time reasons, I'll be making the presentation, and my colleagues and I will be available for questions and answers. Next, please. The organizations contributing to this work are the Instituto Clima e Sociedade, Projeto Hospitais Saudáveis, PHS, and the Institute for Governance and Sustainable Development, IGST. I recommend their websites. You will find out the amazing job they do. Next slide, please. This presentation spotlights the synergy of using bulk procurement practices, buyers clubs, and others, such as regulatory and education approach, to make ozone-depleting substance and HFC's recovery at end of life economically feasible. It goes through the process of selecting partners and sectors to reach large-scale replacement of inefficient cooling equipment. Specifically for this presentation, we're going to be talking about air conditioners. This approach uses energy efficiency and corporate sustainability commitments as entry points and accelerates adoption and access to efficient and lower GWP equipment, reducing buildup of ODS and F-gas banks and simultaneously managing existing banks. Next slide, please. We intend to show today the opportunity of using bulk procurement practices through Buyers Club, where members are buyers with large purchase power, such as a big retail store chain, large banks, hospitals, and others, which purchase air conditioning equipment for its stores, branches, and installations, and purchase in large quantities. Their purchase power is used to aggregate demand, negotiate a favorable price with manufacturers, and simplify installation and ODS and HFC recovery for final disposal. Next slide, please. We have in the supply chain the air conditioning manufacturers. We aim at high energy efficiency of their products as entry point. We can also negotiate in the package a lower GWP, fluid, spare parts, training, and installation. In the demand side, we focus on large buyers and aggregate the demand for air conditioning units needed to negotiate lower price. Companies with corporate sustainability programs with energy efficiency policies included are easier to accept equipment replacement programs and allow revision of procurement criteria to include high energy efficiency and lower GWP refrigerant fluid. Those large-scale replacement programs will bring significantly larger quantities of ODS and HFC recovered for viable end-of-life actions. Next slide, please. Those are the steps taken to select the first pilots for an air conditioning replacement program. Our partner team surveyed the room air conditioning markets, met with AC manufacturers, with government, regulators, and financial institutions. We also discussed equipment specifications and procurement criteria in order to access high energy efficiency and lower GWP technologies. Next slide, please. This slide shows sectors we have selected for pilot projects in Brazil and Morocco. In Brazil, the health sector was selected based on having over 7,000 health institutions and the strong support from an experienced partner from Healthy Hospitals Project, MidCity, that's an energy consulting firm, and a finance organization, Citaui. PHS prepared a detailed qualitative and quantitative energy diagnostic report for a sample of 33 hospitals. The work is ongoing to implement collection of ODS and HFCs and find final disposal solutions and finance, mainly for public hospitals that we have about 3,000 of them. In Morocco, the bank sector was selected with Bank of Africa, BMCA Group as partner, together with the government of Morocco. Detailed diagnostic was prepared for a sample of Bank of Africa branches in Morocco, and the team developed enhanced life cycle performance analysis, taking into consideration local conditions. Results demonstrated up to 70% energy savings when replacing older and inefficient units with R32 inverter ones. Government and Bank of Africa are working in mutual cooperation and willingness to socialize the pilot strategy in government, power, HE supplies, installers, and end-of-life sectors. Next slide, please. In Brazil, when selected hospitals, we have asked them, are there references to energy efficiencies in your corporate sustainability policy? The answer was yes for 80% of the hospitals surveyed. We knew then that by working with sustainability divisions and the corporate procurement teams, we were on the right track. Next slide, please. Energy and cost savings were analyzed based on the assessment of 33 hospitals, members of the Healthy Hospitals chain. Detailed inventory of existing room and central air conditioning equipment was undertaken, including information on age of units, energy efficiency ratio, and capacity. In the first light blue row, we can see figures for energy efficiency related actions to replace centralized air conditioning units with models with superior energy efficiency. We call the top class A label. This action can bring a large energy and cost savings with a payback of less than 3 years. The next row shows that the replacement of existing air conditioning is split and window units. It brings less energy savings, half the investment cost, and a payback of 5.2 years. Both actions, done together or separately, can bring considerable saved energy per US dollar over life cycle. Next slide, please. The pilot team decided to start with split and window air conditioning units replacement to take the opportunity to address HCFCs to be phased out soon, since most of those end-of-life equipment were still on R22. This slide highlights the potential for 410A and HCFC 22 recovery and the potential for expanding the pilot into a nationwide air conditioning replacement program, which will bring over 22,000 tons of refrigerant fluid to be recovered for final disposal. And this is just for room air conditioning. Next slide, please. In the Morocco case, IGSD, Government of Morocco, and Bank of Africa have developed a plan to replace inefficient room air conditioners that use obsolete ozone-depleting and climate-forcing refrigerants with next-generation technology. The plan is made affordable by aggregating air conditioning demand for a discount bulk purchase and properly installed and maintained air conditioning units for sustained energy performance. R32 and R410A refrigerants will be recovered and destroyed in local cement kilns, and the usable parts and materials will be recycled to create more jobs, to conserve natural resources, and to avoid redeployment. And savings in electricity will be now spent locally. Next slide, please. Energy savings and corporate environmental responsibilities of Buyers Club members can be entry points for successful air conditioning replacement programs, bringing the scale need for an economically feasible end-of-life program. And please keep in mind that educating procurement departments will be key for a successful and sustainable procurement process. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sueli. I would like to congratulate for Brazil and also Morocco for demonstrating excellent cases, good practices for introducing good business model for end-of-life achievement. So later, probably many people would like to ask you questions. So that let's save questions here for the time being. Thank you, Sueli, for excellent presentation. Okay. Great. Now I would like to introduce the next speakers. The next speakers are coming from the Asia Pacific region. I would like to invite Ms. Yurie Osawa, Deputy Director of Office of Fluorocarbons Control Policy of the Ministry of the Environment, Japan, and also Mr. Prin Hantaton, Waste Management Siam Limited, WMS, Thailand. So Osawa-san, please.
Thank you, Karo-san. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. This is Yurie Osawa from the Office of the Fluorocarbons Control Policy, Ministry of Environment, Government of Japan. I'm very honored to share our experience and challenge to promote the idea internationally on the life cycle management of fluorocarbons today. And today we also have a special guest to share the real experience on the ground as well. So I hope our presentation would provide some practical ideas to you. Next slide, please. Okay, let me start off revisiting the importance to focus on the fluorocarbons banks. Fluorocarbons control is important for both ozone layer protection and climate change mitigation. However, refrigerant demand is expected to increase dramatically. The Kigali Amendment aims for phase down of HFC. However, even with the production and consumption control, the HFC emission is expected to increase about 2 billion tons CO2 equivalent yearly. So there exists a clear need to address fluorocarbons emissions comprehensively. That's why the initiative on fluorocarbons life cycle management was launched to promote awareness on it and facilitate innovation and mutual collaboration among its partners. Next slide, please. To control HFC emission is getting more and more important for countries like Japan. Last year, Japan has announced to commit becoming carbon neutral by 2050. In realizing the carbon neutrality, we believe that more proactive measures are needed rather than just waiting the HFC phase down set by the Kigali Amendment. So this is the emission trend in Japan. Despite the continuous decrease in Japan's total greenhouse gas emissions, HFC emissions are increasing every year due to the refrigerant shift from ozone-depleting substances to HFCs. The largest source of the emission was refrigerants of refrigeration and air conditioning equipment, accounting for 92% in 2019. The next slide, please. So in order to manage the HFC emission from the refrigerant used in variety equipment, Japan employs 3 different regulations based on their end-of-life treatment practices. Among the 3, I'd like to touch on the regulation on the commercial fridge and air conditioners, as they are the largest source of the current HFC emission. Next slide, please. Japan has established life cycle management of the fluorocarbons refrigerant, including ODS and HFCs, under the Act on Regional Use and Proper Management of Fluorocarbons. So the regulation encompasses its life cycle from the production or import of the refrigerant to its destruction or recycling. It mandates that people and entities taking part in follow the practices in order to limit the fluorocarbons emission. For example, the commercial equipment users have to conduct periodical inspection to make sure of no leaks of refrigerant. In recovering the refrigerant and disposing of equipment, recovery certificates need to be issued and must be kept as proof of the compliance. Local and central government have the authority to check the compliance and to impose the penalty. Next slide, please. So in parallel with the domestic effort, we provide assistance to push the idea of the life cycle management of fluorocarbons forward with our neighboring countries in Asia, such as informing these countries on how to strengthen their policy and measures, providing capacity building trainings with government officials and those from the industry, and financing the model project on HFC recovery in these countries. Next slide, please. So in this presentation, I'd like to highlight our model project in Thailand, which partners with Dowa Ecosystem and Waste Management Siam. Our guests will give detail in a minute, but to provide some background, this model scheme intends to establish HFC recovery and destruction network in the country which hasn't institutionalized the HFC regulations relevant to its life cycle management, and to actually destroy HFCs with our financial assistance. So in return, Japanese government will receive the credit under the Joint Credit Mechanism Scheme from the country where the project operates. We have started such project in Vietnam and Thailand so far, and we are seeking more opportunities this year. Okay, so let's hear from Mr. Prin Hantanon from the Waste Management Siam on the actual project in Thailand. Mr. Prin, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Osawa. Can you hear me? Okay. So please let me start my presentation about our activities in Thailand. First of all, my name is Prin Hantanon. Currently, I'm working in Waste Management Siam, Thailand. Before that, I would like to give my gratitude to Ministry of Environmental Japan for the support all the time. Without the support, we may not possible to achieve this much success. And also this opportunities to share our JCM activity in Thailand this time. First, I would like to introduce the outline of the project. This project is provided by Waste Management Siam and also our headquarters Dowa Ecosystem. All the activities are funded and supported by MOEJ. In this project, we utilize our existing waste incinerator in Bangpoo Environmental Complex or BPEC. We have contributed to the greenhouse gas emission reduction by fluorocarbon recovery from all the waste generators. Clearly, our major clients are manufacturing factories. The recovery process are conducted by themselves in their factories with a bit of our support. After that, we do the service of the transportation, and also finally we receive the waste and provide the destruction at facilities in BPEC. Our activities are permitted by Thai government, and all the procedures are followed in accordance with Japanese guidelines, with same standard with our process in our facilities in Japan. Next slide, please. Not only the refrigerant recovery and destruction demonstration, in this project, we also did variety of activities to help raising up the awareness and also the capacity building activities. As you can see on the left-hand side, we target all three sectors, the government, service sectors, and also the end users. These activities include the workshops, the recovery demonstrations, and also site tour to BPAC incinerators. We face a big problem from COVID situation, but we held online workshops and got very good response from all the participants. Next slide, please. In this slide, I would like to explain about the details about situation of refrigerant management in Thailand. Currently, the most of refrigerants came to BPAC are recovered from rack manufacturers. However, there are still many potential targets that we are trying to expand our refrigerant recovery network. Not only manufacturers, we would like to expand the network of the commercial sectors, which are main user of large rack system in Thailand. At this moment, we are under discussion to do JV cooperated with some companies, and we expect to do more activities in near future. Talking about the regulations, manufacturer sector and commercial sector are regulated by different ministry in Thailand. For the manufacturer regulations, refrigerants has already controlled as hazardous waste. It had to be treated appropriately and report back to the responsible department. About the commercial sectors, last year in 2020, the government also released similar regulations for municipalities and commercial hazardous waste management regulations. But the problem is that when we look into more details of those regulations, there is still no direct refrigerant control and regulation for both sectors, such as guideline or monitoring system. Therefore, the awareness of many users are still low at this moment. We recognize that we need to avoid refrigerant discharge and to promote recovery and destruction more and more for every sector. Next slide, please. Last but not least, I would like to highlight the outcome of our activities and challenge we are currently facing. We could achieve significant greenhouse gas reduction by recover and destroy the HFC. Moreover, because of the awareness raising activities, we also got more and more support from every sector, especially from the manufacturers. As a result, we can increase the amount of refrigerant destruction every year, as shown in this slide. We have already achieved more than doubles amount compared with the beginning years of the project, and this volume tends to keep increasing every year. However, efforts in fluorocarbon management in Thailand have just begun. I would like to emphasize that such effort must be continued and developed for near futures. One of the major issues that the introduction of legal system will take time to be introduced for Thailand, so I believe that it is important to strengthen awareness raising for end user and all other sector, and also the capacity building for service sector in advance. This must help government to regulate and monitor in the near future. In summarize, we are trying our best to contribute to establishing the good network of refrigerant management in Thailand. With support from OEWG and our partners, I have confidence that this will be success. This all from me. Thank you very much for your attention. I would like to return the presenter back to Osawa-san. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hantanon, for sharing your valuable experience. ขอบคุณมากครับ. So in summary, okay, this is the key message from our presentation. So HFC bank is becoming a bigger and bigger issue to be addressed. The impact of the HFC emissions will become non-negligible for many countries, including developing countries in near future, like Japan is facing right now. So sooner it's better to take action. HFC bank management takes lots of effort as it involves a large number of stakeholders. Therefore, Forming the system proactively is worth investing your time and energy, and Japan continues to provide support on strengthening policy and measures with those who wish to do so. Clearly, the lack of finance is an issue. Establishing a domestic cost allocation rule on F-gas treatment is desirable to make the system sustainable. In the meantime, Japan supports the startup stage of the F-gas treatment through the JCM scheme model project, and we want to improve ourselves as well by our experience and lessons learned. Also, we will disseminate good practices to make them replicable in other regions. CCAC and Japan will publish the case study report, including today's presentations, in the fourth quarter this year. The final page, the final slide, please. So the last but not least, as an advocate of the initiative on fluorocarbon life cycle management, Japan will call for the IFR participation by more partners to promote the idea together. If this interests you, please feel free to contact us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Osawa-san and Kumprim. Very good presentation. We'd like to echo, and sooner is better. And we would like to accelerate our efforts by replicating for such a good practices in Thailand to the world. Okay, now I would like to invite for the next presenter. The next presenter is Mr. Bernhard Ziegele, Program Manager of ProClima of GIZ. Originally, Ms. Francesca Schmidtner, his colleague, was going to make a presentation, but she had an urgent issue today. So that Bernhard kindly offered to take this role to give a presentation. So Bernhard, please.
Yes, thank you very much. I hope you can hear me. And as
yes.
you just said, I stepped in on a very short notice, so please be gentle with me if I don't know all the details. But I would like to present briefly the project that we have been implementing over the last couple of years, which is exactly dealing with ODS banks management. And could you please give me the next slide, please? Yes, so some corner information on that banks project. It is funded by the German government, by the Ministry of Environment. It ran already since 2013, so I'm proud to say that we were one of the pioneers to address these topics. And this first phase was mainly focusing on groundwork. So collecting data, compiling data, and establishing methodologies so that we can actually talk about the topic on a sound basis. It is a global approach with 5 partner countries where we did in-depth analysis, namely Colombia, Dominican Republic, Ghana, Iran, and Tunisia. The selection was done in order to have also some comparisons. So a small island has a different setup than a bigger industrialized country or a bigger development country, landlocked, and so on. So we tried to get some different cases on this one. The partner institutions were mainly the Ministries of Environment, the NOUs, but we saw immediately that we cannot deal, in this topic, we cannot deal with Ministries of Environment or NOUs alone. So industry, private sector needs to be involved, technology providers, but also the waste management units and especially also social organizations dealing with the informal waste collection. And yeah, I think I've said all this. The next one, please. And as I said, data collection was a big task that we had, and we compiled all this data and could then say with relative confidence that the actual bank over the last couple of decades was substantially high. So in gigatons, almost 2 gigatons on banks, and 1.5 gigatons we see are emitted every single year. And that is enormous. That is almost double of what Germany is emitting per year. And it also equals around 440 coal-powered plants, medium size, medium efficiency. So it's really substantial. What we also see is that the composition of the banks is changing. So of course, at the beginning, there were more CFCs. Now more HCFCs and HFCs are catching up fast. The next slide, please. So the first slide was actual data measured and reported. This is a projection from 2015 onwards. And we see that HFCs are, of course, the main dominant factor over the next decades. And HCFCs and CFCs will disappear quite fast, unless, of course, there is new illegal consumption, which we all hope will not happen. Next one, please. So what we also found out as a main lesson learned is that technology alone does not help. So if a country requests to be put a very nice technology destruction plant at the end of the cycle, it is not the entire story. So what we saw is that first we indeed should start with inventories, because only what you measure you can manage. And we develop methodologies for that. Then, based on the inventories, policy measures need to be defined, need to be elaborated, involving the private sector. I think that is also one of the key lessons learned. After that, or along with that, proper collection schemes. And that needs more than a couple of cylinders or dozens of cylinders that usually the HBMPs or other projects under the MLF provide. So there is a huge need for extensive collection schemes, including cylinders. After that, we need to prioritize, of course, the treatments and see, and we saw that very nicely before in the presentations, that recycling, reclamation, and recovery should be first exactly along the same priority list as the waste management that operates for decades already. And destruction should only come at the very end when it's needed, because fluorine as a resource will be more and more important to be recovered. At the end, of course, local destruction or export should also be considered, because not every single small country will have its own destruction capacity. This is just too expensive and not used up to capacity, and therefore not reasonable. So export and concentration of ODS or HFC that are obsolete in bigger plants. And one other lesson learned that is not here, but I think it doesn't come as a surprise for all of you. The cheapest measure to manage HFCs is to prevent it in the first place. Next one, please. So these are the publications, and it's important for us that they are used, that they are spread. And as I said, a lot of methodologies and guidelines to come up with proper management of HFCs and banks. Next one, please. Yes, some more guidelines on different issues, also in a variance tracing video, it can be used. And perhaps one last sentence before I give back to you, Makoto, is that the BMU we are awaiting the Commission to continue working on this topic and to get a second phase of this global project so that we can join forces over the next couple of years. But it's a bit, we are still waiting for that. That's what all right, I'm done with that. I'm happily available for any questions you might have. And thanks very much for your attention.
Thank you, Leonhard. Sorry about the video not available through the system, but let us all share the presentation and the video later on our website and also our system. So later we're going to collect questions, comments in regards to GIZ's work. Well, I am extremely grateful for GIZ and German government's very important work. And I think this provides a very important ground foundation for everybody to work on fluorocarbons end of life life cycle management. Thank you very much. Now, I would like to introduce the next speaker. Next speaker is Mr. Kofi Aguiardo, Director of the Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency Energy Commission of Ghanaian government. Kofi, please.
Thank you very much. Let me first say that I am having serious internet challenges here, so I'm using 2 devices, one as a backup. So permit me, I'm going to rush a little so that I can finish my presentation before I experience any hiccup. Yes, I just want to address audience to a very important issue of energy efficiency opportunities while facing down HFCs. And I'm going to treat you to an important country perspective. Next slide. Yes, before the introduction of MEPS in Ghana in 2005, this was the outlook of the market. Our market was dominated by used cooling appliances. I mean, controlled over 80% of the market. And these appliances were imported mainly from Europe. And on the average, they consume over 1,000 kilowatt per hour compared to 400 and 250 as at that time in US and Europe, respectively. And come to think that 30% of the total annual generation went waste because of the use of inefficient appliances, then it gave us a cause to be very worried. And there was the need for us to do something quickly. And almost all the used appliances were fluorocarbons laden. Next slide. So this is a visual representation of the problem, what the real problem is. You can see from the harbor where these used and inefficient appliances are dumped every now and then they are carted to the marketplace. People shop for them, and because they have reached almost their technical usefulness, in less than no time, they start developing faults. So they are taken to the mechanic shop, and over there, the cost of repair becomes unbearable for the users. So they leave it there and then they don't come back. And when the mechanic is also tired, he dumps them in any place that he finds available. And eventually, all these things end at the popular and the notorious spot in Ghana called Abobloshi. That is the graveyard of electronic appliances. Suffice to say here that leakages start right from the mechanic shop through the street corners and then finally at Abobloshi. Next slide. Yes, so this is clear pictorial evidence. This is the port of Tema, the larger of the 2 seaports that we have. I want to draw listeners' attention to one thing. When we complain about dumping, the popular excuse is that, oh, we have tested the appliances and they are found to be in good working condition. And that is the ruse that the exporting countries use to dump these things on us. But looking at these pictures, if they are reusable cooling appliances, I leave the judgment to my listeners. All these things were seized in the first quarter of 2020 during the lockdown. I think that they thought that during the lockdown, the port was going to be left unattended to, so they could bring these waste into the country. But with our commitment and prying eyes, we got all of them seized. Next slide. So we use 2-pronged approach to deal with this problem. We use the stick and the carrot. The stick meaning regulations, and then the carrot incentives to change the market and also change the taste of the ordinary consumer. Next slide. So we entered into a public-private partnership with a private company so that all the seized appliances will go to him. He will scientifically recover the refrigerant and then proceed to dismantle the equipment. So this is a picture of the refrigerant being recovered from the appliance. Next slide. So dismantling in progress. This is how it is done. The metals are separated from the foam and the glasses and the plastics. Next slide. At the end of the day, we are left with a huge pile of foams that we have no need for, and we don't know what actually to do with the pile of foam. Meanwhile, this foam also contains environmentally hazardous substances. Next slide. So, as I indicated, we use two-pronged approach. The first one is the use of regulations to check the influx of these unwanted appliances. And then the second one is also to incentivize consumers to change their taste and also transform the market. So we use innovative financing mechanisms to encourage consumers to buy new and efficient ones, while at the same time regulating the standards pertaining to the new appliances that come into the country. We use another regulation also to prevent the use and the substandard ones from also coming into the country, especially those that come with the unwanted refrigerants. And we did a rebate scheme. It was highly successful. So on the back of that, we have teamed up with United for Efficiency and BASE, and we are currently running Eco Fridges project. And that project for an air conditioner or a refrigerator to qualify, that must meet a certain high standard of efficiency level. So it is very encouraging. We have even crossed the 500 mark, but for the influx of these used and inefficient appliances that is still disturbing the market, we would have achieved very far than the 500 that we have exchanged or sold so far. We are also using collaboration, international collaboration, to stem the tide of this influx of used cooling appliances. And Ghana is a member of the Cool Coalition, and in fact, chairs the Cool Coalition Working Group on importation of used cooling appliances to Africa. And through that, we have developed a policy brief. And that policy brief outlines what the key challenges are and the opportunities for joint action. And at this point, I couldn't agree with Nathan more when he said that there is, and I quote him, there is so much that we can do together. Indeed, there is so much that we can do together if we want to rid our environment of the filth and the unwanted substances that we are all fighting to get rid of. Next slide. So this is an ample demonstration that if we're able to stem the tide of the influx of used appliances that are inefficient and also get rid of substandard appliances, this is the result. In Ghana, when we started in 2005, look at the consumption, average consumption rate, that is the green line. Look at the fact that it has dropped significantly, very steeply, from close to 1,400, and now we are under 100. Meanwhile, volume, that is the second line, remains almost the same. Prices in dollar terms, almost the same, but consumption has dropped significantly. And this is one good thing that you can get from applying MEPS and also checking the influx of used and substandard appliances. Next slide. You find out that for MEPS, we have achieved a lot. And for the enforcement, robust enforcement, we have been able to exchange about 10,000 used and inefficient appliances and replace them with the same number of new ones in home. That is through the rebate. I've told you about the eco fridges, that is also in the hundreds. And 47,000 refrigerators and 11,000 air conditioners illegally imported into the country have been confiscated. And we have also succeeded in saving 400 gigawatt hours in electricity through this very effort that we have put in place. And that amount of savings is equivalent to a third of our latest hydro dam built with over 600 million US dollars. And the CFC recovery that we have banked so far is in excess of 1,500 kilograms with over 1 million tons of carbon dioxide saved. Next slide. So how do we do this, or how did we do it? Energy Commission is a small organization with staff strength of about 120, just 120. So what we call system leadership approach, so that a small organization, we are able to turn the knob to get the whole system turning to follow the direction that we want the nation to follow. And we rely on our stakeholders. We have key stakeholders that we deal with, government agencies and civil society organizations. We are able to get them on board so that we lead and then the whole nation follows. So we serve as champions. Our institution is a champion institution in Ghana, and we have individual champions who are ensuring that we get the best for the country in terms of energy efficiency and the environment. Next slide, which concludes. So thank you very much for this opportunity, and thank the organizers very, very well for organizing this and inviting me, and I apologize for my bad internet connection. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kofi. You and your organization are a champion from Africa, and thank you very much for sharing very good story of your success. So that was presentation from Ghana. Now I have another speaker who is Mr. Kasper Kofod Hansen from the United Nations Development Program. So Kasper, I would like to invite you to speak.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank the organizers of the side event for giving me the opportunity to present some of the lessons learned from UNDP's ODS waste management and disposal pilot demonstration projects. My name is Kasper Kofod Hansen, and I'm the regional coordinator for Latin America and the Caribbean of UNDP's Montreal Protocol program. Next slide, please. UNDP had 3 pilot demonstration projects approved by the Executive Committee many years ago for Brazil, Colombia, and Cuba. The projects were approved to address the remaining banks of CFC. However, many of the lessons learned can be applied to the future challenges with the HFC banks in the context of the Kigali Amendment. The pilots focused on transport, storage, and destruction of ODS waste, and all collection activities were co-financed by the countries. In Brazil, Colombia, and Costa Rica, the ODS destruction capability was assessed according to international standards in line with the CHEAP guidance. Test burns were conducted in all 3 countries, and it was demonstrated that CFCs could be safely disposed of in both cement kilns and in hazardous waste facilities. In the ODS waste management and disposal projects, the main focus is often on the actual destruction of the end-of-life refrigerant. However, most of the real challenges lay in other parts of the systems, and are mainly with the collection and recovery of the ODS waste and to generate a sustainable operation of the system over time. In Cuba, approximately 133 metric tons of ODS waste had already been recollected by the country prior to the initiation of the project. Cuba had previously had a large national substitution program to replace all energy inefficient domestic refrigerators in the country, as well as other inefficient rack units. However, this is the exception. In most other countries, it has been a challenge to collect the quantities of ODS waste that the pilot projects had committed to at the time of the submission of the projects. This demonstrates the need to have a proper policies and regulation in place to guarantee that end-of-life refrigerant is actually recovered and not simply vented. This must be combined with some incentive programs or extended producer responsibility schemes that can help to guarantee the long-term sustainability of the system. An interesting example is from Colombia. The development of a sustainable EPR system started in 2013 and has progressed to the point of transition from the voluntary pilot phase to the implementation of a mandatory system. The institutional capacity in the form of an industry-administered model is now established and operational in 5 major cities. It is supported by legislative and regulatory measures now in place and by financial incentives related to VAT reductions and energy efficiency incentives applicable to equipment replacement. Substantial bilateral funding is in place through a NAMA support project that accelerated the introduction of climate-friendly refrigeration equipment, as well as expanded processing of end-of-life domestic refrigerators. This has an overall target of 300,000 units replaced by 2022 and coincides with the targeted 50,000 refrigeration and 5,000 unitary air conditioning units annually set for the fully developed EPR program in the 5 years period. Next slide, please. Our view is that HFC bank management and instruction are necessary in the implementation of the Kigali Amendment. There's a huge potential climate benefit associated with it. However, we must admit that this management is very complicated and difficult to enforce due to the nature of the current management practices. Gas should be stored in cylinders and will take time to extract from the equipment. Therefore, the regulation will not work unless substantial incentives are put in place to support the regulation. We need to find ways to provide additional incentives to such activities. For example, linking with carbon markets or to the allocation of HFC import quota or a carbon tax. The idea is to add or create value or credit to the activities. This may not be applicable to all Article 5 countries, but it should be tested in some countries that are tested in building such mechanism. It should be noted that the multilateral fund has traditionally not worked on end-of-life destruction, with the exception of a limited number of pilot demonstration projects. This is a gap that must be filled in order to close the life cycle and to improve the effectiveness of the Kigali Amendment. Next slide, please. Addressing the HFC banks will be a very important topic in the future, and we need to be very creative and innovative and work on carbon financing. UNDP is looking forward to working together with all of you to address all the future challenges with HFC banks in Article 5 countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Casper. Now I would like to ask 2 fundamental questions to the presenters. One is, how can we mobilize the private sector? And the other one is, how can we shape up the market for the effective participation by the private sector? Across today's presentations, the presenters touched upon these issues while they have struggled from challenges, and some of them actually made a big success somehow in mobilizing private sector finance and people. They have tried to shape up the market by improving the regulatory framework and providing incentives. There can be some hints for this and provide potential replications. To answer these questions, may I invite Sweli? Sweli from Brazil, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, so could you give us a hint how to effectively mobilize private sector people? Because your presentation actually will touch upon that point.
Yeah, in Brazil, in our work, the first thing we did is to work together with industry associations. And like I said in the presentation, we work through the energy efficiency lens and helped the government with the studies to change minimum energy performance standards, labeling programs, so to make the products more suitable for what, in terms of the climate impact and better energy efficiency, energy savings for the consumers. So we had this long period of work with the private sector, working with energy efficiency regulations and like I said, standards and labeling program. And once that part was dealt with, then we got private sector more interested in providing the equipment that we needed for the replacement programs.
Okay, thank you very much. And then, are there any additional comments from? Okay, coffee, please.
Yes, yeah, thank you very much. Involving the private sector right from the word go is a very good way to ensure success. So in our case, right from the development of the standards up to its implementation, we never left the private sector alone. Number two, we recognize that government is a bad businessman. So under no circumstance should we allow government to spearhead any commercial venture. So what we do is that we create the environment for the private sector to operate. We have done it several times and it has succeeded. The first time we tried that was when we did the lighting retrofit in 2007, 2008. Initially, you see, the private business, they are always skeptical, but you need to convince them, prove a point to them that there is business in there to make, and then they follow. So when we created the enabling environment, we gave the business to them to import the bulbs, and that is where it clicked, and they continue to import the bulbs for sale. For the refrigerating appliance market transformation, we gave the business to them. You go manufacture, buy the one that is manufactured up to our standard, label it well, and you bring it. We will help you to promote it. And that also did happen. So now we don't even worry ourselves again. Anytime we come up with a project, they know that there is a good thing in there for them to gain. So they themselves come. We no longer chase them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Coffee. Well, that's an insightful comment. I think it is extremely important to come up with regulatory framework or to shape up the market, but at the same time, consultation and also the collection of comments, collection of consultation with both the stakeholders, including the private sectors. I think it's very important to understand business perspectives, and I think by so doing, we can come up with incentives through the national system, local system. So I think that's your activities actually will effectively demonstrated for that. So it would be nice if we could continue with this kind of discussion. However, now it's the time is coming to close this event. So that I would like to thank all the presenters, speakers who contributed to today's event. Also in the chat room, there have been a very frequent communication between presenters and also audiences. Well, it actually is very exciting to see. Having said that, I would like to invite Ms. Asako Toyozumi, Director of Office of Fluorocarbons Control Policy of the Ministry of the Environment, Japan, to deliver her concluding remarks. Toyozumi-san, please.
Thank you, Kato-san, for the introduction. Friends and colleagues, on behalf of the organizers of this event, I'd like to say some words as my concluding remarks. First of all, I would like to thank all the speakers, Dr. Swedi Cavarillo, Yurie, Mr. Brinhantanon, Mr. Bernhard Ziegel, Mr. Kofi Agyarko, and Mr. Casper Kofod Hansen for their great contribution to this event. As has been pointed out, HFC Bank is becoming a bigger and bigger program, even though the Kigali Amendment introduces a cap on the future HFC production and consumption. Since HFCs have a powerful effect of global warming with high GWP, addressing this issue is extremely important, especially when we aim at achieving the 1.5 degrees Celsius goal and carbon neutrality in the latter half of this century, as set by the Paris Agreement. We believe the life cycle management is a useful and practical approach to tackling it. Under the initiative on fluorocarbons life cycle management, Ministry of the Environment, Japan, has worked with our partner countries and organizations to disseminate information and duplicate relevant policies and measures, including through capacity development programs for developing countries. Today, we had excellent presentations and discussions regarding efforts to address the HFC bank issues. All of them were rich and insightful, and I have recognized that many of our partners are willing to accelerate these efforts by resonating with each other. The challenge before us is big and daunting. However, I am sure that we will join our forces to solve the issues through our cooperation. Again, I would like to thank the speakers as well as all those who participated in this event virtually. My special thanks go to my colleagues, Nathan from CCAC for their tireless efforts, and my colleagues at the OECC. I hope we continue to work together. As of now, the world is still suffering from COVID-19. I sincerely wish the health and safety of you and your family. I hope we can see in person sometime in the near future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Toyozumi-san. And I would like to congratulate you all for the success of the meeting. And I hope we can see each other. So the meeting is adjourned for today. Thank you very much for your participation.